My name is Jamie. I'm from the United States. I grew up in New Mexico. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns, mixed together usually. Right now, I work as a patient care advocate for a fertility company. I was originally trained in school for doing forensics and osteology and biological anthropology. I did death work, reconstructing identities from human remains. I also did some early human origin research as well. And I spent a lot of time working with death, and I loved it. And then the world changed. COVID hit. Plans went maybe not wrong for me, but certainly very, very different. And I realized that I wanted to switch gears and do more life work. I started working as a birth doula and supporting specifically LGBTQ queer people having babies, being a voice in the room and being a person in the room they didn't have to explain themselves to. It's hard. It's on call. You have to be that person. And I wound up transitioning into fertility work because I wanted to help more than just a couple people at a time. I wanted to be there earlier in the journey. And I also realized that specifically for, the queer families that I was supporting, most of them were the lucky ones that had access to fertility care, that had access to, company-sponsored benefits, or worked for European companies that had better healthcare than we do in the US. And I wanted to be on the other side of the story, and I wanted to be expanding who could get access to care. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm on the way. So I am queer in how I love, and as far as my gender goes, it changes on the daily. The simplest term that I use is transmasculine, because I went from a very feminine person assigned female at birth, and I rejected all of it, and then became very masculine in my presentation, and I've slowly picked and choose the elements of femininity that I want to add back to myself with intentionality. I am transgender, I am non-binary, I am gender fluid, and I center that in my life as a way to show that I exist, to show that we exist, and for other people who have no context and maybe feel the same way, I like to be a resource for that. And when it comes to my fertility work, when it comes to my career, I want to be loud enough that people can find me when they need me, and I want to be open enough that people feel like they don't have to explain themselves to me to be respected, to be understood, or to get the care that they need. I have been around many feminists who reject everything about me as an insult to feminism, who reject what I have done to my body as an abomination to the female form, and as perpetuating the patriarchy, as submitting to the patriarchy by following in its footsteps. And I think that anyone that talks to me for 30 seconds would very clearly understand that that is the opposite of what I'm doing here, but it requires listening to find that out. For me, feminism is a celebration of exactly who you are with intentionality. It is choosing what elements of femininity are actually yours, that actually belong to you, versus, what you were told you have to do. So when it comes to feminism, as a trans person, I can't exist without it. And I don't believe that feminism can exist without accepting or understanding trans people, non-binary people. We are the people that are taking apart exactly what it means to be a woman, to be a man, to play the roles that we were given. I think of myself as somebody who is through my very existence challenging every element of the patriarchy. Nothing about me is binary still. Nothing about me is actually submitting to those. It is a radical act for me to take on this element of masculinity. And when I do exist in those spaces, sometimes people assume that I am a cis man. And it's so interesting, the conversations that I get to have with cis men when they think that I'm one of them, when they think that I agree with them, the things that people have said to me about women, about men, about bodies, because they assume that I have the same experience. I don't have an answer to where male hatred of femininity, male hatred of women comes from. From my experience, there is so much fear in the male mind, fear of judgment, fear of ostracization, fear of being told that you are small or being lesser or cannot provide or cannot support yourself or others. And in this society, despite all of that fear and anxiety over what it means to be a man, if you look around, men are not meeting that standard anyway. Especially when I inhabit masculine spaces, to see what men do to each other and do to themselves, the put-downs and the language that they use. So it just perpetuates this defensive position of always needing to prove yourself, and proving yourself by putting others down, by showing that you are better than others, better than women. You can do more, you can be more. My last thought on feminism, or maybe my overarching thought, is that it should be a celebration of individuality and intentionality of identity. Deciding for yourself and making a conscious decision and conscious understanding of who you are and why you are that way. I am a non-binary, gender fluid, transgender, queer, sapphic-loving person. The number of isms or identities that you can stack onto yourself is the way that you can find community and understand yourself, but it's so easy to limit yourself within those definitions. And if instead you just see what makes you happy and follow that joy to its natural conclusion, you don't know where it's going to go. There's an insult that, like, boomers and older people use. It's called trans trenders. These are people who are exploring their gender or calling themselves trans just because this is what's cool to do now. I love this. Like, try it on. Like, explore your gender, have fun with it, and see what happens. And if you decide that you do identify with the same gender that you were assigned at birth, so what? You've been on this whole journey and you have a new understanding of it. That's feminism.